People often ask me, how does Vedic meditation apply to the release of stress? How does it work to release stress? For this, we have to understand a little bit more about what stress actually is. Stress, you see, is not an environment. It's not your work or your boss or the demands that are made on you. Those things are potential stressors if you're available to be stressed. In order to be available to be stressed, we have to be depleted of a particular element known as adaptation energy. Adaptation energy is a phrase that describes a propensity that humans have. That phrase was created by Professor Hans Selye, one of my teachers. Dr. Selye was the creator of the word stress as it applies to human physiology and the mind. Selye's description of stress in the general adaptation syndrome theory that he created in the 1930s and 40s was the first time the word stress was used to describe anything other than engineering properties. So stress, according to Selye, is not a situation. It's a reaction to a situation. When you have too little adaptation energy at any given moment, a demand that is then made on you, and you have to then either interact with that demand successfully, yielding a wave of happiness, or the same demand made on you when you have very little adaptation energy, and you find that you cannot interact with the demand successfully, you have a reaction to the demand. And the reaction is to either fight the demand, to stop it from being a demand, or to flee from it. Thus the famous twin words, fight, flight, reaction. A fight-flight reaction is an autonomic, automatic response to any demand with which you cannot and to which you cannot adapt. So when you have a maladaptive reaction to a demand on you to make change, what is that demand to make change? Maybe the light got too bright. Maybe you had sets of expectations that weren't met. Maybe it was too hot, too cold, too this, too that, too much for you at a given moment. Then your body, in order to protect itself, will first of all attempt to make the demand go away. That's the fight aspect of the fight-flight reaction. The flee aspect is to flee from the demand to keep it from being a demand. And our body goes through a series of biochemical changes that are extraordinary in order to produce this fight-flight reactivity. Our digestion stops, our skin becomes acidic, we begin perspiring so that we can lose water and begin being more nimble, quicker. We dehydrate, and our body goes through a whole series of reactions to help us survive the demanding situation. One of those things is for the brain to take a snapshot at the moment of being stressed of all of the colors, the smells, the sounds, and tactile sensations of the environment in which you find yourself. So if you're eating a strawberry and you get a telephone call, and the telephone call brings you information that you can adapt to, and then you have stress reactivity, not only are you reacting to the information, but your brain is reacting to and memorizing the flavor and the look of a strawberry. You may deal with the thing coming through the phone very effectively over the next few days, and it ceases to be a stress trigger for you. But your brain is still going to hold on to the smell and flavor of a strawberry and the look of it without informing you. This is called a premature cognitive commitment. The legacy of having been stressed is premature cognitive commitment. Premature because the brain prematurely is making a commitment to the otherwise innocent perception, the smell and taste and look of a strawberry. So later on, without you knowing, when that strawberry look, that color, that smell, that flavor comes within your perceptible range, your body will begin to move towards stress reactivity, even if you're in a perfectly safe environment. And we have, according to the best neurologists and cognitive scientists, we have accumulated about 100,000 of these prior to the age of 20. That there are about 100,000 things which will be triggers for us to go into stress reactivity, even if we're not in a dangerous situation that we can recognize as such. And this gives us a general feeling of malaise. That stress feeling that we have, we don't even know where it's coming from because we're simply reacting to all kinds of otherwise innocent, perceptible phenomena that just happen to be in our environment, left over from the past. So stress as an initial experience is the stress reaction. Stress in legacy is premature cognitive commitment, the way the brain has made commitments to the danger status of all these things. When we practice Vedic meditation, the mind goes completely beyond thought, and it touches a state of bliss, the supreme inner contentedness that lies in that transcendent field that is there in everyone's mind. I like to emphasize Vedic meditation does not create that state of being. What it does is it reveals it to us. It reveals that there's a layer deep inside of us that always has existed, but which we haven't awakened to. And we haven't awakened that layer, because we rarely touch on that state. When you touch on that state regularly during 20 minutes of Vedic meditation, you practice that in the morning, you practice that in the evening. The byproduct of the mind having that fabulous, satisfying experience is the release of lots of bliss chemistry into the physiology. This bliss chemistry countermands and counteracts and dissolves stress chemistry in the physiology. So when you are practicing Vedic meditation, not only are you releasing and relieving layers of stress due to the phenomenal level of restfulness that is experienced while meditating, but because of that release, you awaken the potentials and adaptation energies of the mind and body, so that when new demands come your way, you have a greater chance to interact with those demands effectively, to interact successfully, and you're not creating new stress. And dissolution of stress on a twice-a-day basis, removing the existing stress from the physiology, and then engaging in successful interaction throughout the day and throughout the evening, ends up yielding a situation where you are releasing stress faster than you can possibly reaccumulate it. The net product of that is that you become less stressed day by day. And with that, the liberating of your adaptation energy, the liberating of your mental computing capacity, your brain's computing capacity, all of this improves and improves and improves through regular daily practice of Vedic meditation. It's a very, very powerful technique for complete elimination of accumulated stress in the human physiology.